stop everything you're doing for a second, because what happened at Indian Wells in 2026 is one of those stories that makes you remember exactly why you fell in love with tennis in the first place. We are not talking about a routine fourth-round match. We are not talking about two players going through the motions on a sunny California afternoon. We're talking about a collision of personalities, histories, psychology, and pure sporting drama that had the entire world, and I mean the entire world, locked onto their screens, leaning forward, barely breathing. The name at the center of it all is Alexandra Ela. 20 years old, Filipino, left-handed, and at this point in the 2026 season, quite literally the most exciting player on the WTA Tour. If you have not been following her story, let me catch you up fast, because you need to understand the full weight of what this match meant before we even get into the tennis itself. Just days before this fourth-round showdown, Ela stepped onto Stadium 1 at the BNP Paribas Open, widely considered the fifth Grand Slam in tennis, and she proceeded to dismantle world number 4 Coco Gauff in a performance that left commentators, analysts, and fans completely speechless. Now, yes, that match ended with a retirement from golf due to a left arm injury. But do not let that distort the picture, because before that medical timeout happened, Ela was not just holding her own against one of the best players on the planet. She was winning convincingly, leading 6-2, 2-0, tearing apart Gauff's baseline game with surgical left-handed top spin, exposing angles that Gauff simply could not handle, and breaking her serve with a calm and ruthless efficiency that had the entire crowd losing their minds in real time. That performance sent genuine shock waves through the tennis world. And now, still buzzing with that momentum, Ela was preparing to face someone equally dangerous and far more personally significant. Her opponent in the fourth round was Linda Noskova, world number 14 from the Czech Republic. And the reason this matchup carried so much extra emotional weight, the reason every major sports network was running detailed pre-match analysis, the reason tennis fans were genuinely losing sleep over this fixture came down to two words that had become a rallying cry across every tennis forum and social media platform on Earth. Alex wins 2x. See, Ela and Noskova were not strangers walking onto that court for the very first time. Their history stretched back years all the way to the junior circuit, where the pressures are raw and the rivalries cut deep. The first time these two met was back in 2018 at the prestigious Les Petites As tournament in France. Ela was just 12 years old, barely a teenager, and she outlasted Noskova in a breathless three-set final, 5-7, 6-3, 7-6. Then came the 2020 French Open Junior quarterfinals, played on the brutal red clay of Roland Garros, and Ela did it again. She went down a set, looked momentarily vulnerable, and then completely flipped the match on its head, winning 4-6, 6-3, 6:2. 2 meetings, 2 Ela victories. That record, those two results from their shared youth, had been permanently baked into the psychology of this rivalry ever since. For Ela walking into this match, those wins were more than statistics. They were proof, internal confirmation that something in her game naturally troubled Noskova, that her left-handed angles and defensive athleticism created specific problems the Czech player had never fully solved. For Noskova, those losses represented unfinished business. She was 21 now, operating at a career-high ranking, playing the best tennis of her life, and she was absolutely desperate to settle the score on a professional stage in front of the entire world. That tension, that unspoken history between these two young women was precisely what made the atmosphere inside Stadium 1 feel almost volcanic before the very first ball was struck. Now let us talk about Linda Noskova properly, because she genuinely deserves that, because she is absolutely not someone you can dismiss or underestimate for even a single second. The Czech Republic has produced tennis champions with remarkable consistency for decades, and Noskova is being positioned as the next great name in that magnificent lineage. Her game is constructed entirely around aggression and raw power. She stands right on the baseline, sometimes stepping inside it, and she takes the ball incredibly early, robbing opponents of time and forcing errors through sheer pace rather than waiting patiently for mistakes to materialize. Her serve generates tremendous leverage from her height, regularly, producing speeds that can completely freeze returners in place before they can even react. But the real weapon is that backhand. Flat, heavily disguised, driven deep into the corners with frightening precision. It is the kind of shot that makes a tennis court feel about half its actual size for whoever is standing on the opposite side of the net. We saw just one day before this match exactly what Noskova was capable of mentally, not just physically. She fought through a grinding, exhausting, emotionally draining 3-set battle against veteran Serena Cersei and found a way to close it out, winning the final 2 sets 6-4. 6-4 after dropping a tight opening tiebreak. That is composure. That is the kind of mental strength that separates genuinely good players from truly great ones. So you had two fierce competitors, both hungry, both carrying enormous psychological stakes, meeting under the blazing desert sun of the Coachella Valley with the whole world watching. Alexandra Ela's tennis is built entirely on intelligence and tactical versatility. As a left-hander, she enjoys a natural geometric advantage against right-handed opponents because her cross-court forehand loaded with heavy top spin naturally targets the backhand side off someone like Noskova, jamming her into awkward positions and forcing her to redirect pace that is already moving at a difficult and uncomfortable angle. But Ela is so much more than a retriever or a defensive counterpuncher. She spent significant time developing her craft at the Rafa Nadal Academy. And you can see that influence woven through every dimension of her game. She knows exactly when to absorb pace and redirect it brilliantly, when to flatten out her shots and commit to a clean winner, and when to slow the tempo completely with a sliced backhand that disrupts her opponent's timing and rhythm in ways that are incredibly difficult to adjust to mid-rally. Her movement across the court is quite simply extraordinary. She covers ground with a fluid and explosive athleticism that makes putting the ball past her feel like an almost exhausting endeavor for opponents. We saw that endurance on full display in her opening round battle against Diana Yastremska. A punishing 2-hour 43-minute marathon that Ela eventually won 7-5, 4-6, 7-5, finding a crucial break at 6-5 in the final set to close it out without a tiebreak. The conditioning, the composure under pressure, the clutch instinct, it was all unmistakably present. And because the golf match ended so abruptly with that early retirement, Ela entered this Noskova clash significantly fresher physically than virtually any other player reaching this stage of the draw. That freshness was going to matter enormously if this match extended into a long and punishing third set. Here is where the story becomes truly fascinating, where the real drama lives. Not just inside the tennis, but in the psychological layers surrounding it. Because while Ela carried that beautiful 2-0 junior record against Noskova, her professional record against Czech players as a whole had been haunting her career like a persistent shadow she simply could not escape. 11 professional matches against Czech opponents on tour. 11 consecutive losses. Every single one without exception. This was what tennis insiders and passionate fans had started calling the Czech curse. And it was a genuinely remarkable and deeply unsettling statistical anomaly for everyone in Ela's corner. Earlier in 2026, she had competed hard against Teresa Marikova at the Qatar Open and fallen short. At Wimbledon the previous July, she had played beautifully against former champion Barbara Krejcikova, taking the first set convincingly and genuinely threatening before. Krejcikova's tactical adjustments in the second and third proved impossible to handle. At the Canadian Open in 2025, she had done something eerily similar against Marqueta Vondrousova, winning the opening set and playing some of her best tennis before watching the Czech player shift gears and pull the match completely away from her. The pattern was unmistakable and deeply consistent against Czech opponents. Ela competed brilliantly, grabbed first sets, and then watched momentum evaporate as her opponent adapted and found the spaces in her game. The Czech school of tennis produces players with near-flawless technique, ice-cold emotional control, and the tactical sharpness to make adjustments mid-match that completely reshaped the dynamics of a contest. To finally break through, Ela could not simply play one outstanding set. She had to sustain an elite level of execution from the first point to the absolute last across potentially 2 full hours of desert heat under the crushing weight of expectation on a massive public stage. That was the mountain directly in front of her. And layered on top of all of this was the extraordinary atmosphere that Alexandra Ela generates wherever she competes. Something that genuinely sets her apart from almost every other player currently on tour. The Filipino diaspora in California is enormous, deeply proud, passionate, and vocally electric. And when Ela plays at a tournament of this magnitude, she does not merely bring a fan base. She transforms the entire event into something that feels culturally significant and historically meaningful well beyond the sport itself. Stadium 1 was expected at full capacity. Over 16,000 fans with a huge portion draped in Filipino flags, chanting and singing with a sustained intensity that you simply do not associate with a typical fourth-round tennis match anywhere in the world. The WTA itself acknowledged Ela's transformative impact on women's tennis by creating the Philippine Women's Open 125 event to channel the extraordinary interest she generates across Southeast Asia. She has pulled millions of brand-new fans into the sport. People who never watched tennis before her, who came to it entirely through her story, and who now follow the WTA with a devotion that rivals anything seen in traditional European and American markets. That crowd energy is a genuinely powerful force. It lifts players when legs are failing and doubt is creeping in. Ela has shown consistently that she feeds off this energy rather than collapsing beneath its weight. She absorbs the noise and converts it directly into fuel, historically playing her very best tennis when the atmosphere around her is at its most electric and overwhelming. Noskova's challenge was to construct a mental wall around her own focus and treat the entire match as if it were being played in complete silence, drawing on preparation, technical discipline, and the memory of her biggest victories to stay grounded against that relentless partisan storm. Strategically, Noskova's team would have identified one number above everything else heading into this match: first serve percentage. When Noskova's first serve lands consistently above 65%, she dictates the entire match. She controls tempo, sets the terms of engagement, and prevents Ela from doing what she does most dangerously, which is attacking second serves with a heavy aggressive return that immediately flips the pressure back onto the server. When that percentage drops, when Ela starts seeing those slower second balls regularly, the complexion of the match shifts entirely. She drags Noskova into extended baseline wars where defensive athleticism and physical freshness give her a real and potentially decisive edge. That was the core tactical tension running through every single game off this match. Could Noskova impose her power quickly enough and consistently enough to avoid being pulled into the grinding physical battle that Ela was almost perfectly engineered to win over time? The Indian Wells desert conditions added one final layer of complexity to an already deeply intricate puzzle. Daytime heat makes the ball fly faster and bounce higher than virtually any other hardcourt venue on tour. Evening IR cools and thickens, demanding constant adjustments in footwork and shot selection throughout the match. The high kicking bounce plays theoretically into Ela's top spin game, pushing balls above Noskova's preferred contact zone and forcing her to strike from awkward heights rather than clean and flat rough the middle the way she loves. As the warm-up finally ended and both players settled at their baselines, the noise inside Stadium 1 reached a level that felt almost physically tangible, pressing in from every direction at once. 16,000 fans, flags everywhere. The Filipino contingent generating a sound that rolled out across the entire Coachella Valley. Two young women, 20 and 21 years old, carrying years of haired history, months of professional hunger, and the full psychological weight of every narrative written about this match, stood ready to finally let E-Tennis answer every single question the words had raised. The talking was finished. Everything that needed saying had been said by every analyst, pundit, and passionate midnight forum poster in the days leading up to this moment. Now, it was entirely about the white lines, yellow ball, and whatever these two remarkable competitors had stored deepest inside themselves when the stakes could not possibly be higher. This was the match, and what happened next was going to echo through women's tennis for a very long